one thing we would talk about the movie, I wanted the movie to feel like a full meal. I knew it was going to be in conflict with the concept of genre, but I also knew that, all of these characters that you were going to meet were going to die supernaturally horrific deaths. I knew that was going to happen, and I knew that if we did our jobs right, audiences would fall in love with these characters. And so I wanted to have a scene that could balance the supernaturally horrific things that are coming with something that's supernaturally beautiful.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, twin brothers return to their hometown to start a business, only to discover dark forces awaiting them, in director Ryan Coogler's supernatural horror, Sinners. In this fusion of gothic horror and 1930s Mississippi history, the film follows twins Smoke and Stack, who plan to open a new juke joint in their hometown. But as the pieces come together and their opening night begins, they find themselves confronted not only by the dangers of Jim Crow-era Southern life, but also a lurking undead menace. In addition to Sinners, Coogler's other directorial credits include the feature films Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Creed, and Fruitvale Station. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Coogler spoke with director Rachel Morrison about filming Sinners. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, you guys.
You guys, while you're in a clapping mode, you guys got to see a 70 millimeter print, which is pretty special. So let's shout out the projectionist back there who made that happen. It's such an honor to be sitting here with you tonight. We've known each other for a long time, and from the moment I met you, I knew you would do great things, make powerful art, and maybe even change the world. But somehow you still never cease to amaze me. And this film, Sinners, your latest contribution to the art of cinema, is operating on a whole other level. It's a cinematic masterpiece. There's so much to discuss here. And not nearly enough time. So I'm going to try my best to focus on all the very specific choices that make this film singular, a Ryan Coogler film, if you will. So let's start with the ideation. How did the seeds of your stories come to you? And specifically with Sinners, which I know is quite personal, tell us when and how this wild genre-bending concept began to take shape.
It's a great question. Thanks for all the kind words, Rachel. And thanks everybody for coming out to see the movie. This one kind of came to me all at once, but also like it was a slow build at the same time. My Uncle James was my introduction to the blues, and he was a guy who was born in Mississippi, raised there until early adulthood, where he fled the state to California, and ended up in Oakland, where he met my maternal grandmother's younger sister, Sammy, who the main character of the movie is named after. And for an extended period of my life, he was the oldest male member of my family. And whenever I would go spend time with him at his house, he would always play blues music. It was constant. He was kind of obsessed. And that was my introduction to this genre of music. I did not see that music as being something for me. It was just kind of there in the background while I was spending time with my uncle. But after he passed away in 2015, I would often find myself missing him. So I would kind of find those old records we would listen to. And when I listened to them with an adult ear, and in the practice of trying to remember him, it made me fall in love with the genre. And that was kind of a base for, what this film is. I was also dealing with, just honestly like the fear of having worked in the industry for, over a decade and not having had a chance to make something that was as personal as I would like to make. Just by the nature of the awesome movies that I had a chance to make before, one being based on true events. That was our first time working together. If you guys don't know, Rachel was my first cinematographer. She was a cinematographer on Fruitvale, and she was a cinematographer on the first Black Panther, and she introduced me to Autumn Archipald, who's my cinematographer now. I just left the Kodak house with Autumn, so it's real cool to talk with her and then to be here talking with Rachel. And Rachel's an amazing filmmaker. She made The Fire Inside. That was our first movie. It's better than anybody's first movie should be. But it's really cool to be here with you. But yeah, so I started to get scared that I would get, like, I felt myself getting older. I felt my life changing with having kids and all the complexities that come with that, parents aging, and all of my collaborators that we work with. I saw the same things happening with them. And I was nervous that, I'll look up and we wouldn't have been able to make something that only we could have made. You know what I mean? It had just been more sequels and things that could exist with or without us, so to speak. Maybe not in the state that they were in, but so I was motivated by that after finishing up Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And I was thinking a lot about my uncle and thinking a lot about music and wanting to make a genre of film, a film in a genre that maybe folks don't know that I like based off the movies that I like. That was kind of how I got to horror. And then I was listening to this old blues record by Howlin' Wolf called Wang Dang Doodle while I was at home in the Bay. Like, I think I was washing dishes with my wife and producer partner Ryan Coogler. And I was listening to the song, and then the idea kind of came to me from there, and from there I just leaned into a lot of my influences from everywhere, and it kind of came up with this.
So you have this idea. It comes to you, while washing dishes, and now it's time to write it. And I don't know if this rumor is true, but I talked to you when you were in lockdown trying to get the script done. I feel like you wrote it in 2 months. Is that true?
I'm not sure how long it was exactly. And yeah, it was like a short amount of months for me, like opening up Final Draft and having a script. But for me, I had been working on it and researching it for a long time. And that stuff, it's not the WGA, it's the DGA, but that stuff counts as writing, like I was researching and reading a lot of books about blues music and a lot of books about the setting, and then I did an outline that took some time. The outline process might have took me like 3 months while I was reading a lot of stuff, like basically everything I could find about the music, about the artists, about the economy, a lot of study about the Jim Crow, that sharecropping economy. And I was watching a lot of movies too, but once I decided that I had something and I had an outline, and that was when I went to Zenzi Coogler and Sevak Ohani and my partners at Proximity Media, and I said, hey, I'm ready to write this thing, and then from there it was about 2 months. Yeah.
It's amazing. How close is the film we saw to your initial draft?
Such a great question. It's close. Like, structurally, it's a few differences that we found in the edit. I work with Michael Shaver, who's a picture editor on this. Shav cut. He was an editor on all my movies. But right, Shav will. So we did some adjustments in terms of, like, for instance, the scene where you meet Remick. If you were to read the screenplay, that's the first scene of the screenplay. So that's the major one. But outside of that, and then sometimes like from working together, sometimes I'll find lines on the day, and some of the more impactful lines in the movie I found on the day, like with the actors in front of me, looking at them, but yeah, this is the most. I think this is the closest that I've ever been to what I wrote. I think
that says something that's amazing. In terms of research, like there's so much authenticity to your work, and it's always so clear that you've done an extensive amount of research. Can you talk to me about the group of experts that you assembled, from twin consultants to Mississippi Delta specialists, but everything you did to ensure that the story was underpinned by historical accuracy and emotional honesty?
Yeah, absolutely. I work with a lot of consultants, you know, on every project, and yeah, for this one, we had a bunch, man. We had a Mississippi Delta historical consultant, a Mississippi Delta economic consultant. We had several Mississippi Choctaw consultants. We had a spiritual consultant, a hoodoo expert who Sevok found and Zenzi worked with to help develop all of the language and blocking and rituals around the things that you saw on scene, her feeding the mojo bag, her throwing bones, what was supposed to be at the grave for their daughter. You know, her name, Dr. Yvonne consulted on all of those things. We had dialect coach and dialect consultants. We had a gambling consultant for the for the juke joint. We had a choreographer who had a whole department to make sure that Jack's step dancing was in cue. On our music department, we had probably 15 different cultural consultants there, and a lot of them fulfilled dual roles on the music side, because a lot of those musicians are historians. You know, somebody like Rhiannon Giddens, who's a incredible musician, incredible fiddler, incredible banjo player, but also like the most advanced historian of that type of music. We had a singer, traditional Irish singer named Ilaria, who kind of helped Ludwig compose that first verse of Rocky Road to Dublin, where Jack is stretching the notes out before the music starts. You know, and then we had we had a lot of consultants on this movie, but I tend to work with a lot of them. But it's all in an effort to try to get as much right as we could. My even down to like my cousin Wendy, who's my Uncle James' daughter, who she cooks the catfish in my family, and she cooks catfish in a style that was taught to her by her father, who's my Uncle James. It's the Mississippi style. So even down to like, you know, what we had in the kitchen, you know what I mean? Like Wendy had to consult on that and make sure it was right, because it's like the Louisiana style, there's the Mississippi style. You know, it's all of these different aspects to it that we wanted to try to nail. And it was complicated because Annie is from Louisiana, but she's cooking in Mississippi, so we had a lot of discussion. Yeah.
But you feel it. I mean, I feel like that really is the difference that elevates, I think, everything that you do. Like there is such honesty and authenticity to the work. And you can, you feel everything that went into the research behind it. I'd love to talk about casting for a second. I know, it was sort of a no-brainer. Mike is twins. We're gonna get to Mike, but the ensemble cast, you have such incredible performers in these roles, and you worked with Francie Maisler, who is, I love as well. But just talk about finding the right characters for each, or the right actors for each of these characters.
Yeah, we were blessed, man. We had roles where I had actors in mind, and then we had roles where like we were like dead if we didn't find somebody, So the script was kind of full of those things. Like I'd always envisioned the twins as being identical, and I had Mike in mind. But it's funny because I was talking with Chris Nolan, who's like a mentor of mine, and I was talking with him about with Oppenheimer when he was writing that, if he wrote it with Cillian in mind, and he was like, "Man, I'll never do that," and I was like, "What?" Because I always cause I always write with actors in mind. He was like, man, I don't do that, man. He's like, cause I end up writing something that I've seen Killian do before, you know. So he was like, I try to get the actors out of my head, and then go and then figure that out after. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna try that this time, you know. So I did that as best I could, you know. And I wouldn't think about Mike when I was writing the twins, but Wumi, you know, I had her in mind for sure when I was writing Annie, and I didn't know her. You know, I'd only seen her in a few things, and but you know, I was thinking about her a lot. And then Omar Benson Miller, who plays Cornbread, I was thinking about him a lot because of the physicality of the role. Like I knew I wanted him to be, I wanted him to be Omar. You know, yeah. But in terms of Sammy and finding Miles, that was the one that scared all of us. You know, and that was where we hired Francine very early, like before the script was done. We got Francine on board to start looking for this kid. And I don't know how many of you guys know Francine, but she's really, really famous for finding people. You know, it's kind of, yeah, no, totally. Yeah, it's kind of like what she's known for. And yeah, she was excited. It was my first time working with her since Creed. So we were fired up to be back together. And yeah, man, she did a global search. We were getting tapes from Paris, tapes from the continent, you know, Australia. And you know, we had no idea what this kid was gonna look like or feel like. And eventually we got Miles' tape. And it was, you know, as soon as he opened up his mouth, he was like, "Hey, I'm Miles Caden," and you know, and it was kind of clear he didn't really know how auditions worked because it was very dark, you know, and he was kind of like, he wasn't phoning it in, but he also wasn't like overly thirsty either, you know, and we were kind of looking like, man, this kid, you know, and then when it was time for him to try to get another tape, he was not available. Like we couldn't find him, you know what I mean? So it's like, yo, what's going on with this kid, you know? And then we eventually found out he was on tour and he was trying to finish his high school diploma like at the same time. So it was like, oh, no wonder we can't find this kid, man. He's like, you know, and then I remember he sent his additional tape back in, his call back in, and he was great. And I remember I saw Francine send me an Instagram of him on his page, him graduating. Like it was him going through his getting his cap and gown, and his family was kind of following him through the parking lot. And they were kind of like talking about how proud they were of him for being a professional musician while still taking care of his business. And like something about something about that videotape, I was like, I think this is our kid. So then we flew him out, did a chemistry read with him and Mike, and we brought Ludwig, our composer and our executive producer, to the chemistry read, just for him to feel him out as a musician, to see how he was with the guitar, and to kind of see how he was with lines on the day and things like that. And then, you know, and then we made the call to bring him on. And like the movie wouldn't work without this kid, you know.
He's amazing. So, okay, Mike, let's talk about Mike for a second. You and Mike have collaborated on 5 films now, and it's such a special relationship to grow and foster together. And here you are raising the bar yet again with Mike playing twins, which is not just incredibly demanding on him as an actor, but also very technically challenging to pull off. What was this process like, and what were some of your discoveries along the way?
Yeah, I work with Mike a lot, man. Like as a you know, when me directing and him acting, it's been 5 times, like you said, but it's been more times than that if you zoom out just on that type of relationship. Like, you know, I was an executive producer on Creed 2. That's another movie. He directed Creed 3. I was a capital P producer on that. His first directing gig. So that's another situation with us working together. You know, he's doing a movie in London now. I just got off the phone with him, you know, about something else he got going on. You know, so we work together like all the time, you know, and at that point you become family with somebody. And I have a very keen insight on how he functions. Like, he's very ambitious. he has very broad shoulders as a professional. Like, he wants to do the more challenging thing. He never wants to phone anything in, So I knew that coming to him with this role, I had a higher chance of him saying yes, the crazier it is. You know what I mean? So him, like me dangling the idea of playing twins in front of him. He's like, oh man, he's more likely to do it because he hasn't done it before. He knows it'll be a challenge. But I think he was on a different level in this movie. Even than I had seen him before. We worked with a woman named Beth McGuire, who was our dialect coach on the Panther films, and she's an acting coach at Yale, acting teacher, I should say, at Yale University. So you name any of the actors that came, to the business from out of there, I worked with a lot of them, like Lupita Nyong'o or Winston Duke or Yahya Abdul-Mateen or she trained all these folks when they were in school. Brian Tyree Henry, he worked with Brian obviously in a beautiful movie. But she trained all those guys. And Mike has been a pro since he was like 8 years old. And he never went to school. For him, it was all like on the job training. So this was a cool opportunity for him to kind of slow everything down, get away from all of the businesses he's running and everything, and just work on building these characters out. So I wanted to give him as many resources as I could. And I was blown away from day one. Specifically, like if Mike, he plays characters that are like that. He generally plays characters that are more like quiet and focused but who he really is as a person is closer to Stack. You know what I mean? He's always smiling and joking and charismatic so it was great to have a character that was like closer to like who he truly is. But like Smoke is very distant from who Mike actually is. So I was really impressed by that performance, I
mean, I was too. And I've also, we've been in, Mike, me, Coog, and Mike were riding around in Oakland, 15 years ago or something?
Yeah, you covered in Duvetine holding the camera. Yeah.
Babies. There is something incredibly special about all of these kind of long-lasting collaborations. I mean, you've really built not just a team, but a family. Ranging from amazing production designer Hannah Beekler, your incredible costume designer Ruth Carter, obviously Sev and Zinzi, your producers, and Mike, your editor, who dates back to Fruitvale. But in this one, and you mentioned it as well, I think we have to single out Ludwig and really talk about, it's a whole other level of musical collaboration, I guess, to the extent that he's actually now a producer on the film. And I hear he was on set for most of principal photography.
He was on set most of it, and he worked with his wife, Serena Göransson, who's also a musician. She was our executive music producer on the film, and she was on set. If he wasn't there, she was there, So we were covered down constantly. It was a different kind of project in terms of our working relationship.
And he'd built out, or you guys had collectively built out a lot of the music before you started shooting. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. We had to, cause so much of it would be on camera. So he and I took a scouting trip to Mississippi and Tennessee. Basically went on the blues trail, and he had his dad with him. His dad's a blues guitarist from Sweden, who fell in love with the blues when those musicians were touring in Europe because it wasn't safe for them to tour in the States. So we were there, together, me, him, his dad, a guy named Boo Mitchell, who ended up being a big consultant for us, and we recorded a lot of the songs at Royal Studios, which is like a legendary studio in Memphis. And yeah, we did that tour, met a bunch of folks. And then we had like some writing sessions in Memphis where a lot of the songs got recorded. Traveling got recorded by Alvin Youngblood, which ended up being Traveling in the film that you see Miles perform on camera. We had to have all of those songs done, man, because like Traveling, we shot Traveling, we shot like day 0 of photography. Like before our principal day, he was in that car singing that song. So, and Miles had to learn how to play the guitar, after we cast him. So he was, so we needed those songs, and then the song Pale Pale Moon, if you guys remember that scene, Ludwig and Brittany Howard wrote that. They did that in Nashville. So you had to go to Nashville and sit with Brittany. And we didn't have the movie yet. So like what ended up happening is like, like Ludwig would be like, hey, he'd be like, hey, come see us at the studio and walk all the musicians through the movie. So like, I have to sit, so I have to like sit, in like, it's like maybe, 10 blues musicians and they looking at me like this, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, all right, yeah. So then Stack does this and then he does that. And I like walk them through the whole, through the whole movie. And then they'll be like, okay, got it. And then I'll go make a song. And that was basically like how it went down. Like with Brittany Howard, it was FaceTime. She's brilliant. And then Raphael Sadiq wrote I Lied to You. He's from Oakland. My daddy actually went to school with his older brother, rest in peace, Dwayne Wiggins, who just passed away a few months ago. So it was our first time connecting, but we from the same neighborhood. He's a legend in Oakland. And talked to him and he was like, I got this blues song I've been always wanting to write since I was 19. And so then it was like, boom, we got that. But yeah, we had to have it all before we got going in New Orleans and kudos to Ludwig and Serena, man, those guys, they were, and all the actors, because they would act and then they would go to the music studio after and go try to lay something down. And we hired a few musicians that are musicians / actors too, like Peter Drymanis and Lola Kirk. They're touring musicians that are also like phenomenal actors. So they came on board and they were there to support Jack whenever they would have to sing. It was pretty crazy, man. Like that definitely was pushing Ludwig to his limits.
He exceeded and excelled and did all the things. So cinematography, which I saved for last, so I didn't end up spending the entire 30 minutes talking about it because I'm very tempted to. I just had lunch with Autumn a couple of days ago, and I was shocked to hear that you guys had been talking 16 millimeter. And then that morphed to 35. And, to me, it's like, of course, IMAX. But
yeah.
Tell us about that process.
Nah, yeah, it wasn't, of course. It was, yeah, man. So we shot 16 our first time making a movie together. And, I love that format. And we love that camera. It's 416, an Arri 416. Rachel says it's one of the best cameras ever made.
Probably is the best camera.
Yeah, so like after Panther 2, Rachel lined it up because she's super connected. She was like, hey, you want to buy a 416? And I'm like, absolutely. So then she connected me with the folks at Arri. And I got a 416 camera and I'm like, yo, I'm gonna shoot a horror movie on this thing. And then Bradford lined me up with the right lenses, and then our AC from Wakanda Forever, a guy named Serge Nafa, who didn't work on this movie because he did one battle after another. But he kitted the camera out, like follow focus, all of the most high tech things you can imagine for a camera, like high def, video assist. Like I'm set, all these boxes, and crazy enough, they all parked at Ludwig's recording studio. But we'll talk about that another time. But so I was like geared up, and I knew I wanted this movie to have like a grindhouse feel. This is before I really got into the research. This is before I saw Mississippi with my own two eyes and understood like the epic nature that this movie would need. And then Autumn was like, what you want to shoot it on? I'm like, 16. She's like, great, I'm shooting 16 now for Gia Coppola for The Last Showgirl. She was like, I love the 416. It's going to be great. And then I had a meeting with a visual effects supervisor who had done a lot of twin work. And a lot of it is done, via advanced split screen. And he was like, hey, man, we can't use 16 because that negative is going to have gate weave, basically, because it's a smaller piece of material, and it's not going to be as precise, so it'll mess up the split screen process. He's like, yo, we can't use it. So I'm like, shit. I got this camera, all this packages. So I'm like, all right. So I'm like, oh, what do we use? And he's like, we got to use some kind of 35. And I'm like, all right, what about 2perf? Because, I like grain. And 35, they've kind of like developed the grain out of it. You know what I mean? In an effort to get away from the film look, So I got a little scared, and he was like, "No, we'd be cool with 2perf 35." And I'm like, "All right." And then I got a call from one of our executives at Warner Brothers, named Jesse Ehrman, who we've been working with for some time, and he was like, "Hey man, you give any consideration to large format?" And I was like, "Oh, like it was like ding ding ding," you know what I'm saying? Cause it's a lot of discussion over where Pam at. Oh yeah, it was a lot of discussion today at the Kodak House of whether he meant large format digital or film. Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Like I was like, and I had just seen the world premiere for Oppenheimer like a few months. It was a few months after that, and seeing that with Ludwig to support him and Chris. And I remember the feeling of it. And I was like, oh, we should look into this, So then I hit Autumn up, and Autumn's like she's big anamorphic, you know what I mean? So she was kind of like, hey man, it'd be, what about this format, that format, and I thought about the Ultra Panavision 276 aspect ratio that Quentin had done some years back and took on a road show with Hateful Eight. So I was like, yo, what if we combine that with IMAX? And as soon as she said, hey, that's never been done before, I was like, all right, boom, we on, So then we tested it, and then we really loved it.
I'm going to ask questions fast, and you can answer fast. Right. So in terms of deciding when to be wide, when to be tall, like just quickly talk us through that, because I have one other question.
Yep. All right. So okay. So the Delta, the Mississippi Delta has a very defining physical characteristic in that it is very flat. People will argue that it's the flattest place on earth, right? And if you go there, you feel like you can see you feel like you can see the earth bending. You know what I mean? Specifically on some of these plantations. So and I realized that another thing about the South, specifically Mississippi, once I was there, was this idea of isolation. This idea that you can drive miles and miles and miles and miles and not see another car. You'll just see, fields, whether it's cotton, whether it's pecan, whether it's tobacco, and then you'll slowly happen upon another house or something like that. And that isolation is peaceful, but also it's very frightening, because if something was to go wrong, nobody's coming to help you. You know what I mean? So I thought that we would need that width, to kind of capture the feeling of the flat landscape and that feeling of just supreme isolation that exists down in the South. As far as the IMAX aspect ratio, the 1:43, when we wanted to be tall, we just kind of looked at it as, where are our moments of heightened situations, heightened emotion, heightened musicality, heightened spirituality, or heightened horrific imagery, and when do we want audiences to have that visceral experience? We've dealt with expanded aspect ratios with our work in Panther and making decisions on when we want to go, tall and when we want to be in other circumstances. This involved all of that. But it was also just thinking about, when would it just be, because I saw The Dark Knight at the Metreon at like 4 a.m. opening night. You know what I'm saying? Like if I hear about anything being shown at IMAX, that's how I want to see it. You know what I mean? Generally. And I know the feeling of the audience member when you just had those moments where it's just like, holy shit, and I was thinking like, well, when do I want people to feel that, in this movie? So that was another thing that governed it.
Okay, so speaking of holy shit moments, the mind bending, time traveling, clap out loud oneer. It was as if you could hear the whole audience's jaws hit the floor and their hearts pound and sink to the beat. When did you conceptualize this? And get technical with us for a second. How many cuts? What rigs? Just talk about that process of pulling that off.
I'll go backwards. All right, so technical, it is, I count them. 1 cut, 2 cuts, 3 cuts. 3 cuts. And the cuts are because the IMAX, we shot that IMAX film, and those rolls, they can only hold about, I want to say, I'm a butcher the time, but I'm going to say like 2 minutes and 10 seconds. And the scene is quite a bit longer than that. And then we also had to hide the location change from inside to outside. The juke is on the soundstage, and then that outside location is straight up in like a swamp. You know what I mean? In an open field where the actual juke is. You know, so we hid that when the camera pans up to the burn. We actually burnt the roof though. I mean that shot was a fun time. How we and big shout out to Akaman Jones, our choreographer, who did a beautiful job, and Rennie, our cinematographer. I mean our Steadicam operator, who Autumn found and worked with. So how I came up with the idea for it. It was really like when in the script writing phase, and just thinking about, you know, one thing we would talk about the movie. I wanted the movie to feel like a full meal. You know, it would be. I knew it was going to be in conflict with the concept of genre, but I also knew that, you know, all of these characters that you were going to meet they're going to die supernaturally horrific deaths. You know what I'm saying? Like they're going to be killed by vampires and turned into them, and it was going to be blood everywhere, and it was going to be. So I knew that was going to happen, you know, and I knew that if we did our jobs right, audiences would fall in love with these characters. You know what I'm saying? And so I wanted to have a scene that could balance the supernaturally horrific things that are coming with something that's supernaturally beautiful, if that makes sense. And with that concept, I was kind of looking for moments in the film to do it, and it made sense. If Sammy is just like insanely gifted musician, you know, he could be a vessel for something that maybe he doesn't even understand. And how we decided for it to be continuous was you know, we wanted the audience to kind of feel like swept up in it in a way that you'll feel when you know, everybody's been to like a crazy concert, right? Where you see somebody feel like they transcend humanity. They so good at singing or playing the guitar or dancing or whatever that is. And the feeling of seeing that happen and feeling like you being like lifted out of your body, you know what I mean? Like that was what we were trying to accomplish with the filmmaking, you know?
I mean, you definitely did.
All right.
I'm going to get in trouble if I don't wrap this up, but I could talk forever. So this is such a
thanks, you guys.
A pleasure. Shout out to Ryan. Shout out to Sinners.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.